Well, here we are. It's been about a year since I first uploaded a video to YouTube. I want to thank everyone who has watched one of my videos. My wife and I fully enjoy the outdoors and the critters we share it with. It's been a struggle at times, especially the editing part, and I'm a long ways from being proficient at that. One of my children told me about 6 months into this new endeavor that subscribing to a channel on YouTube did not cost anything. Who knew? Well, apparently almost everyone but me. My goal is not to gain fame and wealth, but to share stories, helpful information, and wildlife videos with every one of you. Unfortunately, without subscribers, likes, and such, it's up to YouTube and its analytics. So if you could help me out with that, I would be grateful. I have several videos that are posted and will be coming out every 2 weeks to a month. The next video is about elk vocalizations. So be sure and turn the volume up just a bit. The following story is a true story I would like to share with you. Yes, it's embellished a little bit. I hope it makes you smile, because that's why I shared it with you. Keep the wind in your face, and be careful out there. Cool. The morning sun did little to warm the frozen landscape. I don't recall the exact temperature, but it was low enough that ice crystals danced on the wind like diamond glitter. My breath froze in the air and drifted off briefly, rising before the cold consumed it. The object that I followed had wandered down into a narrow, timbered canyon rimmed with rock walls, towering ponderosa pine, and pungent juniper. The ground had 8 inches of fluffy Arctic powder, over 1.5 feet of crusty, crunchy, frozen snow. A snowshoe day for sure, as cross-country skis in this terrain were untenable for any of those except those with Black Diamond skills. For sure, not me. I crossed many tracks, pine squirrels, deer mice, elk, and chickadees. But the tracks I followed were fresh, curious, stealthy, and calculated. The tracks talked to me, and I listened to them. They were made only hours before, clearly since the new snow had stopped only several hours ago. The strides were steady and stopped frequently, weaving aimlessly in and out of the rocky rim to views down into the canyon. The tracks turned to follow some fresh deer tracks, but returned to the original path and continued. A feeling of confidence followed me as the powdered snow made my passing silent and still. A big cat. Stride length sufficient to indicate high probability a male mountain lion. A cougar. Scientific name Puma concolor. I had picked up his tracks as they crossed a sagebrush and grass plateau, and then followed them along the edge of the canyon. As I came to a small arroyo, the cat turned and entered the canyon bottom. I followed. The path of least resistance he took, choked with wild rose, rabbit brush, sage, and juniper. Concealment and cover, stealth and instinct. The cat used every and all available cover. The wind and a cold, calculated, liquid movement. Curious about every track and smell, a road map, an encyclopedia of this environment. His environment. I was a casual visitor, a tourist, a clumsy, plodding oaf, dressed in wool, carrying a plethora of space-age accoutrements. To him I was a danger, but only because of the .32 caliber lever-action saddle gun I carried. Otherwise, I was protein, That and only that. And he had the sensory advantage in spades. Without a carbine, he was a deadly opponent. Vastly superior hearing, sight, and smell. He probably weighed 140 to 150 pounds. And there I had the advantage, however slight. But I have no claws, nor fangs, and his speed and agility were far superior to mine, as was his practiced killing technique. He would show no mercy, compassion, or sportsmanship. To him, this was no game. It was survival, and he was looking for prey. I followed unconcerned. I probably should have been. I had not given a thought about the what-if scenario. Normally, mountain lions are very secretive and solitary. They will slip silently away to avoid human contact. They are extremely adaptable to all environments and successful living in urban areas. Most people living in the geographic areas with mountain lions will never see them. They are mainly nocturnal, which means they're active at night, which can extend into early morning or dusk, and outside of mating rituals or den sites, with young, are virtually silent. Lions do not run in packs. If you see more than one lion, it's probably because they are a breeding pair or a female with cubs, from kittens to young adults less than 2 years old. Cougars breed from December to March with a gestation period of approximately 90 days. This coincides with spring green-up and is driven predominantly by prey, availability, and latitude. Males are extremely territorial and have a home range of approximately 50 to 150 square miles. This range overlaps several females' territories, which the male patrols regularly. Mountain lions are present in almost every state in the Union. Our advancement into historical lion ranges actually enhances their migration along with the movement to ban hunting. They're carnivores. They eat meat. And unfortunately, this means domestic livestock or pets become prey. Young males, once they are weaned from another mother, will try and establish their own home range, either by displacing an older male or moving into an area not occupied by another male. This could be an area that normally was populated with their natural prey and has been transformed into a smorgasbord of llamas, goats, dogs, cats, chickens, and tragically, humans. The cat moved through an area with some large boulders. I finally found a track on a boulder that was partially covered by a juniper tree. The clear track had solidified my assumption that it was a mature male. 4 toes, no claw marks, and a defined 3-lobed rear pad. The whole track was about 4.5 inches square. Now remember, dogs have claw marks, more offset toes, and a more oval shape. This was a cat. I'd also started to cross mule deer tracks traveling down the canyon. The cat was aware of this and had probably traveled under darkness to set up an ambush point. I traveled slow and I used my binoculars frequently to scan for movement and that ambush point. This would most likely be an elevated hide that took advantage of wind patterns, concealment, and the overall element of surprise. Cougars are amazing jumpers, and a 10 to 15 foot vertical attack was easily within their abilities. I also knew that seeing a resting cat would be almost an impossible task. However, even a blind squirrel occasionally finds a nut. I kept moving and looking. After several hours, but only about a mile down canyon, I was aware that the area I was in would soon open up into a more level and open terrain. I was running out of time, daylight, and cover. A little below me were 2 huge ponderosa trees that had blown down in a windstorm, or by the erosion of the creek that they were standing upon, and had fallen across to the other side a natural travel corridor. I also thought I could see the tracks crossing one of the logs. I also noticed a smaller side drainage came into the main canyon just below the two fallen trees. Again, a normal travel corridor for deer and elk headed for the more open flat country to graze, and one that afforded them open country for security. Cougar scat. Unfrozen cougar scat. Scat meaning poop. I was close. Close being relative to the vastness of the country and the amount of ground a cat can cover in a short amount of time. I was counting on his curiosity factor. Cats have naturally curious, and maybe, just maybe, that would give me a slight edge. He might wait just a moment, just too long to slip away. My brain notified my adrenal glands to dump a little adrenaline into my bloodstream. A shiver ran along my backbone, and I resisted the urge to run headlong down the hill to my death or glory. "Slow down, buddy," I said to myself. "You got him surrounded. Don't mess it up now." I calmed down and slowly worked my way down to the fallen logs and confirmed the tracks on one side of the trees were my quarry's tracks. But there was a problem. The tracks only went halfway across the tree and ended. Jeepers! My brain shouted for another dose of adrenaline, and I immediately went into commando mode. Knees bent, gun up, and covering all quadrants. Nothing. No explosion of movement as the monster leaped onto me and to begin the fight of the century. Tooth and claw, and an unnatural screaming, after a victory and a bloody bowie knife gripping the monster's life under the snow. Nothing. Well, only one thing to do, follow him. Sans bowie knife. I don't even own one. Now the smart thing to do would have been to back off and figure a way across the creek bottom, below the trees, and pick up his tracks downstream. But I still wasn't sure. He wasn't underneath me, tucked into the colossal root wads, sound asleep. The best thing in my mind was to ease across the log, maintaining the tactical advantage of elevation and sight picture. I chose poorly, only because I elected to keep my snowshoes on. Heck, the tree was 3 feet in diameter, and the two trees were only about 2 feet apart. Easy peasy. In nature, woody plants maintain their bark long after they die. Different for each species. For ponderosa pine, it's about 6 to 7 years for standing trees. I really don't know this for sure, but it's really not important at this point. But these were laying horizontally and were suspended. I'm sure a professional forester could take one look at this situation and determine my strategy, if my strategy was sound. Nope, no forester was to be seen. I did decide to slip out along the log sideways, tips of my snowshoes hanging over one side and the tails hanging over the other. That way, I thought, I would be facing the general direction where I could bend over slightly and look down under the tree. I eased out until I had reached the end of the cat tracks. Nothing. No tracks on the far bank. I eased out a little further so I could see farther under the trees. The next thing I remember, I was backpedaling, like I was at a timber carnival on a rolling log. The tree bark had slipped as I fell backwards between the two massive pines. A couple of bumps and the brief sense of falling as I was grabbing for dear life. Rifle gone, shower of snow and heavy flat things landing on me as I came to a jolting stop. Hanging there, spinning like a wind chime in the garden. Mr. Brain squeezed the adrenal glands so hard, my heart almost stopped. I don't know how many of you have ever experienced true panic. when the natural operation of your collective body's systems all are flashing red and the DEFCON 1 sirens are blaring? Well, I do. I thrashed so hard, my right snowshoe strap across the heel of my boot snapped, and down I went. Apparently my left foot and snowshoe were hanging free. I landed on my pack, which also cushioned my head as I hit the pine behind me as I fell. The fight was on. Snow flew, bark flew. I grabbed rocks and sticks and pounded the imaginary cougar that had pounced on my back. I uttered every cuss word I could remember and rolled around until I finally was able to dislodge the monster that clung to my back like a demon. My pack. I jumped to my feet, stood there in a fighting stance, and roared like a bear. Maybe I was screaming like a little girl. I hope I was roaring. But I was alive. My mental situation began to clear. As the chemicals subsided, I felt tired and sat down. I began to see strange light patterns floating around me, and a soft, baritone chuckling enveloped me. I noticed 2 chickadees flopping on the ground, and was astounded that I may have injured them as I fell. But more I watched them, I could hear them chittering and grabbing their sides as they rolled in the snow, with little tears glistening in their eyes. The lights and the chuckling continued, and as I looked up into the tree canopy, I could see several pine squirrels perched on limbs, and I swear they were clapping, laughing, and pointing at me with their little paws. The colored lights subsided, and the chuckling faded. The chickadees flew off, and the squirrels scampered into the tree canopy. I was alone and cold. I grabbed my down coat and a wool neck gaiter out of my pack, dressed, removed my snowshoe, and took stock of my situation. Rifle first. I found it with no trouble, and it had sustained no damage. I began to sweep the area to determine just where the cat had gone. Next to a tree on the upslope and the uphill side of a trunk, I found where he had landed. When he jumped from the log, he had jumped without a run-up about 15 to 18 feet. He had done this as casually you would have, stepping over a crack in the sidewalk. I could see where he had lain down, probably sometime just after sunup. His tracks led off down the canyon. I turned around and looked back across the bottom of the canyon and could plainly see my tracks coming down the canyon as I approached the 2 pine logs. that were spanning the creek bottom. I felt defeated. Cat 1, Tourist 0. I needed a new plan. I returned to my pack, fixed my snowshoe with some paracord, and was thinking about what the cat was planning. I doubted he would continue much farther down because he would have had to go out into the open flat with no cover. I figured he would cross the canyon or double back to the opposite side of the canyon. I chose out of necessity. I had a long way to walk back, and the side I'd first descended was more open and steeper with more cliffs, and that meant I could see and glass into the opposite hillside better if he decided to lay up there. Flip a coin. I put my equipment back on and retraced my steps a ways, and then angled up into the canyon rim. Cat tracks. Same track undoubtedly. He hadn't doubled back on the other side. He had just reversed his course, but higher on the same side. He was now on my side, ahead of me, and I had the wind in my face. He was surrounded again. I proceeded, but more carefully considering the events of the past hour or so. As I studied the tracks, I could see they were not as fresh as they should have been. Here in the canyon rim, the powdered snow and the wind had drifted them in more than the tracks down in the canyon bottom where the air was still. He had not only seen me and bolted from his hide, but for some reason only known to him, he decided to move of his own volition. I sat down, had a Snickers bar, and a drink of water. My brain needed sugar, boost for what lay ahead. I plodded ahead, thinking about hanging from that stuck snowshoe with a broken C4 vertebra, wondering how long it would take me to freeze to death, or crawling through the snow for several miles, dragging a broken leg, wondering if I had the sand to fight through the pain, and just how I would drag myself into my truck if I made it. Never go alone. Never go alone kept running through my head. And then a flash of movement ahead. I ran. Well, I did something akin to running, considering the snow and the bushes and the snowshoes. Kind of a cross between a baby with a diaper rash and a bull rider after an 8-second ride. Not bad considering those factors. I tripped and stumbled to the rim for several yards, ending up on my belly at the edge of a drop-off with an unobstructed view of the bottom and opposite canyon wall, perhaps 200 yards distant. There he was, striding across the bottom, full tilt, for the tree-covered slope. Man, what a spectacular animal. I pulled the rifle from under my right arm, jacked the shell into the chamber, and squinted over the buckhorn sights. Gone. Where did he go? I watched the whole slope for a movement and finally saw him slipping between the trees about halfway up the hillside across from me. Goodness, but could he cover ground? 250 yards, doable shot at a standing target. Given time to sight and squeeze the trigger. A moving target with open sights, not so much. I watched him travel a bit more, but soon lost sight of him in the growing dusk. I wondered how close I had actually gotten to him. Well, about 30 yards, 90 feet. I had to take off the snowshoes to climb down to where he had rested. He only had been about 12 feet off the side of the canyon bottom, not at the bottom, but more at the beginning where the slope starts to level off. I stared at his bed. Fascinating that I could actually see individual hair marks in the snow where his tail had swished back and forth. A perfect vantage point for an ambush. And there below me were tracks in the snow. My tracks. Clearly defined snowshoe tracks 20 feet below where he had waited. Was he there when I walked by? I kind of doubted it, but I still had an involuntary shiver run up my back. I climbed back to my equipment, put my snowshoes on. Darkness was coming, invading the landscape like an incoming tide, unstoppable and relentless. There would be another time here in this landscape, and that is what any of us would hope for. Another chance, another challenge, another adventure. I began the long dark walk back to my truck.